Hello everybody. Okay, I guess it's my time, okay, to release a video on the Lunaria season. Okay, so I've read through the patch notes very painstakingly and I've watched the release video. Okay, so this is what I have prepared, okay, to help break down and, inform y'all about I guess the main changes that they made for this season. So, okay, there's basically a lot of things that they have changed. So that's really nice. So expect, I hope this is not going to be a very long video, okay? But there are quite a lot of changes. Okay, so maybe we start off with the new season mechanic. Okay, so baseline. Okay, for Lunaria, okay, what happens is you're going to spawn, or statues are going to spawn in a map. Okay, and when you press the league mechanic button, okay, you will release a ring around yourself, okay, that will encompass a certain area of around your character. Okay, so baseline from what we see, we have one, okay, they call it a strum, okay, but basically you have one press of this circle around yourself. So whatever statues are within that circle will basically awaken, okay, something like Legion, I guess, in PoE. Okay, and you will kill the monsters, they will drop loot. Okay, now when you kill these monsters, you will get energy, okay, to basically recharge this strum again. Okay, so if you have enough energy from killing the monsters, then you can go on to another section with more statues and then press it again. Right, so I'm assuming that if you don't open enough statues initially, okay, you're not going to have enough energy to basically continue this strum mechanic. Okay, so this is not exactly a press one button and you get everything kind of mechanic. Okay, so you probably have to plan a little bit on when you are standing and then before you press the link mechanic button. Okay, but I think it is pretty simple mechanic, baseline. Okay, you just press the button, monster spawn, kill the monsters, go to another section, open more monsters, and then rinse and repeat. Okay, now, as always, okay, the best part, okay, about Torchlight is that, their league mechanics have like usually have some sort of complexity or some sort of RNG to it. So I'm glad that, okay, this Lunaria season has these as well. Okay, so the first special event that can occur, okay, is that, okay, they call it Lunar Omens. So very simply, sometimes the mechanic will spawn special monsters, right, that drops more loot. That's about it. Okay, so occasionally you'll just get more loot from the league mechanic. Okay, the second special event that can occur is something called a Rhapsody. Okay, so these are basically, um, okay, they change how the mechanic works, right? So it's no longer just you press the button, open the statues, and then go to another section. Okay, so this is, I guess, is quite cool. Okay, it's makes the mechanic more complex and requires a little bit more planning and a little bit more thinking. Okay, as much as everyone just loves to zoom, I think having some sort of planning or thinking required, okay, helps with the enjoyment of the game. Okay, so for example, okay, if let's say a Rhapsody triggers, okay, and this Moonlight Echoes occur. Okay, so here it says that each time a statue is activated, an additional statue is created at a random location, but the range of each moon wheel, which is your circle around yourself, okay, will shrink with each play. Alright, so you see when you see these, okay, it affects how you plan out your league mechanic. Okay, so Lunar Omens can also stack with Rhapsodies, and there's gonna be 10 different types of these. So yeah, right, there's gonna be a bunch. We'll just have to wait and play the game to see what the others are going to be. Now, the third part of the league mechanic is this lunar harp tuning. So I think, okay, I don't think we really had anything that affects how the league mechanic works, as in like a item that specifically changes how a league mechanic plays out, right? So I think this is the first time, unless I'm forgetting something, right? But when you kill monsters from the league mechanic, they will drop something called these lunar strings. Okay, so lunar strings will be able to affect your lunar harp. So I'm assuming that this is, yes, is something that comes baseline, okay, and it directly affects how the link mechanic works. So example, okay, we have these mirror ripples. Okay, they give you, so they are also gonna have different tiers, right? They're gonna be blue, purple, and orange, right? And they'll give you bonuses or change how the mechanic works. So if it's a blue one, right, the most basic one, as you can see, it's just gonna increase the number of statues that can be activated. Okay, and it also comes with some affixes. So I'm assuming, okay, that these affixes will be roller as what do you call it? It drops with random affixes for sure, right? So here we have charging rate, maximum number of plays. So the fact that they say maximum number of plays, I'm assuming that you cannot just keep chaining the statue mechanic, right? Like there's probably like a maximum of like 3 times that you can press the button, for example. Okay, So that's a blue one. But for example, when you go to purple, right, from the 4th strum onwards, if no statues are activated, destroy all remaining statues and summon one basically big boss for every statue destroyed. Right? So you see, I guess at every step, right, you can basically tune how you want your mechanic to play out. So that's quite interesting. Okay. And for example, the golden one or the orange one, okay, when 6 or more statues can be activated in a lunar ring auto strum. So now this is the zoom zoom mechanic, okay. We don't know how common these are going to be, but this lunar string, for example, makes it so that you can just run through the mechanic and it will automatically open the statues automatically. So that is pretty interesting, but it does say that unable to auto strum during Rhapsody, right? The ones where you actually have to think about how you play out the mechanic. So very, very cool. Plus 0.5 initial number of plays. So initially you can only play one, right? So I'm not exactly sure how they are going to implement multiple strums since you kind of open the statues the moment you press the button, right? And from what we see, the Lunar Hub has two, right, two slots. So I'm also assuming that you can probably socket two of these. Okay, and they also have max level here. So something like, what do you call it? Bounty, probably, where you have to level them up before you can put in the higher tier Lunar Strings. Okay, but I think that's all for the link mechanic. Very, very cool. Now, we have a new base mechanic. So we haven't had a new base mechanic since the beginning of the game, essentially. Right, so now we have something called the creation engine. So the creation engine will spawn in maps. Okay, it's a very, very simple mechanic as well. When you press the creation engine, you will spawn monsters. Okay, and when you kill the monsters, a random reward will light up. Right, so for example, here we have the weapon reward lighted up. Okay, and from what we see baseline, you can have 2 reward crystals that could potentially light up. Yeah, and if the rewards match the same type, you will drop additional loot. Right, so if you get 2 weapon or gear rewards, then you will drop more loot. Right, quite simple. Right, if you get 2 FE rewards, then you get 2 few rewards, you get more FE drops. Yay. Okay. And of course, there's ways to juice the mechanic up. So occasionally, you can also get a gold proc. So from what I understand, this just makes it so that you get every single crystal. So instead of getting 2 crystals of rewards, you instead get 5. Right. So this is the new mechanic. I think it's pretty straightforward. Seems quite good. Honestly, it kind of feels like a one round god of machines, right? Basically, I guess something like that. Okay, maybe it's not really the same. Okay, whatever. Now, you can also change your creation engine to give buffs instead. So, from what they mentioned in the video, if you, let's say, get weapon rewards, okay, you will get a buff, okay, to the drops of gear right throughout the map. Now, they did mention that this effect can compound. Okay, so I don't really know what this effect, like what compounding effect they even mean, because in the video itself they have a void chart for the creation engine as well, and it does say that up to 1 creation engine can appear, right? So there is an upper limit of only 1. So based off the wording, it doesn't really make sense, right? If you could spawn 2, then it makes sense, right? Because let's say the first one has a FE or a few drop chance like buff, and then you go to the second one, there's another few buff drop chance, and then they compound on each other, right? That makes sense, right? But I guess based off the void tree itself, okay, for us to even change the creation engine to the buff machine instead, right, it limits you to only 1. So not sure how this is gonna work. Not sure what they mean by compounding effect, where they like brings over to the next map for some reason, which doesn't really make sense either. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Okay. Okay, lastly, yep, there will be compasses to juice the mechanic, and I guess the final thoughts is that, okay, since this doesn't have a pet specifically, okay, it should be pretty decent for free-to-play players, right? Because, yep, there are no pets that specifically affect this mechanic, so I think you can watch the release video to see, I mean, how the compasses play out, right? Because it'll be a bit too long if we go through every single detail here. Okay, but cool. Now we talk about number 3, which is mapping changes. So number 1 is Vorex. So Vorex is going to go core. So the way we generate Vorex mechanics is very similar to how we did it now, right? You basically still have to kill mobs in the map, and then they'll drop the vials, and then when you have enough vials, you will go into the operating theater. Okay, other changes that they made is that ultimate potions can only appear when you complete the whole chain, so that's really nice. No longer getting ultimate potions at the end of your Vorex run. Okay, now the UI for completed vials is also bigger, so you don't miss it out. Now, I don't know if this is particularly needed, okay, because, uh, yep, yeah, I don't know if this is very needed, but that's a nice change. Okay, oops. Okay, that was supposed to be highlighted, but never mind. Okay, so throughout this entire video, if you see something highlighted in green, right, it's a buff. If you see something highlighted in red, it's a nerf. Okay. Lastly, if you don't want to do the Vorex mechanic, there is a pseudo kind of God of War type buff from Vorex. So if you kill Vorex mobs, you'll be able to get some movement speed, some damage, and some AoE. Right? If you wanted a mechanic that makes you move faster throughout the map, right, but don't actually care about it itself. Okay, sorry, but my PowerPoint has some issues with the color coding. Okay, but there's also going to be some new arena mechanics from the compasses, so that'll be interesting to see. I think if your build is tanky enough, you'll probably still be able to stand in the middle untouched, right, without moving. Okay, now other changes, Vorex crafting got nerfed, so now you're only able to get unique lines from the same unique, so there's no more mix and matching different lines from different uniques. Now this is actually, I think, a humongous nerf, right? But at the same time, it was kind of disgusting that you could get the best lines from multiple uniques in one single gear piece, right? So now that is gone, I guess it does bring it in line, okay, in the power level of other mechanics, but yeah, that's very unfortunate. But yes, okay, overall, you will still want to incorporate Vorex gear into your build for sure, right? Because you can just take two lines from the same unique and then have like four other useful ultimate, okay, not ultimate mods, but four other useful normal affixes, right? So yep, you still want Vorex gear, so Vorex as a mechanic is definitely still going to be very, very okay as a farming strategy, right? Since you still are going to need Vorex gear, you still need to get materials, right? Vorex gear, we are not very sure if they nerf the raw currency drops because Vorex was in fact dropping quite a lot of raw currency, and XD generally wants to shift away from mechanics giving only raw FE, right? So yep, we will need to see how the raw currency drops are going to be changed. Okay, but Vorex core still gonna be a good farming strat. Very nice. Okay, next one, everyone's favorite farm, free to play farm. So God's Chest is now changed. Okay, now it is technically kind of nerfed overall. Maybe we don't really know exactly. Okay, so okay, let's just explain the changes first. So God's Chest will now only be accessible via the compass and no longer via the tree. So what this means is there's an innate cost to doing God's Chest now, right? You actually have to pay some FE, okay, for you to generate this God's Chest. But the buff is that now emblems will now, or emblem drops will now be changed to astrolabs. So this is probably a pretty good change, okay, because emblems were basically worthless due to the amount of people doing God's Chest. So yep, astrolabs is just like a compass, right, for clockwork. So depending on how many astrolabs drop, okay, from God's Chest, it could outweigh the compass cost, right? So we will have to see, right, based off the economy, how much this change will actually buff it, honestly. And now you can also complete God's Chest faster, right? So you only need to complete one round of God of Machines to spawn the chest instead of two rounds. So that's really nice. Cuts down your time quite a lot because that's probably the longest point of the map, right, when you're doing God's Chest. So you see, all these are technically changes. It is like a buff, nerf, change. Not exactly very sure. Depends on your build, how fast you can do the map. Because now that you only need to do one round of God of Machines, right? That's the only fixed timing portion of the map. Everything else will still rely on how fast you clear everything else or run through the map. Okay, and now just a side note, so the God's Chest node will be replaced with module skill drop from bosses, so we'll talk about this very soon. Okay, fluorescent memories have also gotten a buff, right? So they have reworked the two compasses. So, I mean, honestly, it's still kind of the same thing, right? You just have more chance for dropping exclusive fluorescent memories. So these are the regional fluorescent memories, right? From what I understand. And yep, you just have higher chance to replicate. So, okay, the main thing is the last time I farmed fluorescent memories was God of Machines, right? The drone God of Machines quite a few leagues ago. So now we have Creation Engine, which has fluorescent memories as a reward tile. So this could be combined with Creation Engine compasses for a potential fluorescent memory endgame strat, right? So that's pretty interesting. So we'll have to see how good this is going to be. Okay, Now we go on to general mapping or FX adjustments. Okay, very good change in my opinion. Okay, so there's going to be more focus on player damage rather than player survival. What this means is a lot of the mods, okay, have shifted from you needing to survive in a map to monsters having more damage mitigation, essentially. Okay, so this is a good and bad thing. So if you are hyper focused on getting damage, okay, I guess this is a good change, right? Because now you don't have to care too much about defenses. You just get as much damage as you can, right? Every single gear piece just get damage, okay? The downside is now the requirements, okay, for getting into higher time marks is probably going to be harder, right? If the mobs are tankier, right, the damage requirements, for example, to get into profound, to actually juice them up with FXs are going to be harder, which I don't think is particularly a bad thing. I think having a barrier to entry is quite needed, right? Uh, I don't want to mention any other game, but if a game is too easy, right, if you can hit the end game maps within like the first 2 days, right, I mean, you're just gonna get bored of the game really fast. So I think having a higher damage requirement to get into higher time marks is actually a good thing, right? It gives you something to work towards. There is some satisfaction in being able to hit the next damage point, right? And I think it will ultimately feel better rather than you getting one tap every time you go into the map, right? Even though you have the damage. So that's nice. I think that's gonna be a huge change. They also reduce the damage of some damage over time affixes. So this is probably the purple on death degen in deep space, which is why I think they keep showing it in the release video. So that's really nice. Now there's also going to be more void chart pages. So this is very, very, very nice. I really like this change a lot. So now we have 6 void chart pages compared to 3. We don't need to reroll using the keys as much. So this could be a semi nerf to T7 rushing, right? Because now winding keys will technically diminish in value. Uh, yeah, so we have twice the number of pages. Okay, void bosses. They say they now remember your selection, so it should be or it should be easier for you to keep chaining void bosses, right? If you're farming those, so that's really nice. Okay, now deep space resonance is now restricted to later time marks. So if you are a user of the red color resonance, right, you are enjoying really nice prices, right? They were like 2 FE each. Okay, now it's gonna be probably more expensive because people have to be actively farming for it in later time marks, right? It's no longer gonna be dropping from the T7 boss rushes. So I would say that this is a downside for the users, but it's probably an upside for the people who are actually farming it. Okay, jacking is basically, I wouldn't say it's dead, right? Based off what the percentage of the bounty chance is going to be, right? At or currently right now the astronomical bounty chance is about 10%, or not about 10%, but it is 10%. Yeah, we have no idea what this is going to be nerfed to. If they change it to, for example, 5%, I think it's still going to be fine. But if they change it to like 2% or something ridiculous like that, then yep, it's dead. Okay, and then the clockwork deep space probe is slightly nerfed. If I'm not wrong, they reduce the chance of a clockwork something being spawned. Okay, I think there's some translation errors in the patch notes, so all you need to know is that it's slightly nerfed, but should be fairly inconsequential, I think. Okay, now we go on to new skills. Okay, cool. We have the introduction of these things called module skills. Right, so module skills are basically specters from PoE, but you can't just raise specter a mob on the ground. Okay, so where these drop is from the talent tree, right? So the God's Chest node has been replaced with this. So in otherworldly dungeons, native otherworldly bosses have 1.6% chance to drop an additional one module skill, right? So these module skills are basically your bosses, right? So you are able to use them as minions. So very, very cool, right? So and each of these module skills has their own way of scaling. This is the very interesting part, right? And opens up a lot of builds, right? Because every specter or every module skill boss, right, has their own way of scaling. So example, the Trog boss will scale with your strength. Yep, so allows for like strength stacking. So the fact that every single one of them has a different avenue of scaling means you have many, many, many builds, right? Compared to, I guess, other games where they just have different attacks, right? I mean, they just change how they attack, right? Or the looks of it. But yes, I guess here we actually have ways of meaningful scaling. Okay, cool. Now, each module skill will also come with random affixes. So, like having a GG combo for all three of them, for example, will be Omega Money. So overall, this is a buff to, let's say, T7 farmers or anything that involves boss rushing, right? As long as people want to play module skills, which I think there should be a reasonable amount of people playing it, including me, maybe, down the line. Okay, yeah, it's an avenue of farming, so that's very cool. I think it'll be quite an interesting strat to do at the start, right? If you rush T78s. Okay, now the last final note about module skills is that even though this is mostly focused as a minion skill, like you're using them as a damage source, they also did mention that you can use them as generic buff providers, right? For non-summoner builds as well, right? Example, Rapid Protocol, right, gives you movement speed as well. So yeah, you can think of them as like, I don't know, mercenaries from PoE, right? They could be technically an aura bot, right? But you do have to understand that you are sacrificing one skill slot for it, right? So it's not exactly free. Um, but due to some other skill changes, honestly, this could be a pretty reasonable avenue. Okay. Now, we also have some dot buffs for the dot enjoyers, MC enjoyers. Okay, we have this thing called Ill Omen. So how Ill Omen works is that when you deal a percentage of their max life from dot damage, right, you will trigger a stack of Ill Omen. Okay, so I guess you can look at the one below, right, the ones that I've written. So for non-elite enemies like non-rares and bosses, okay, when you deal 7% max life from dot damage, you will trigger one stack of Ill Omen, and then when you hit 10 stacks, you will deal, basically, you will eliminate them, right? You'll just kill them. So what this effectively means is that if you can deal 70% of their life with dot damage, you'll just deal 100% of their life, right? So following the same logic for elite enemies, okay, when you deal 5% max life from dot damage, you'll trigger one stack, and at 10 stacks, you'll deal 30% of their max life. So here, dealing 50% of their max life, okay, with dot damage will deal 80% instead. So this is what Ill Omen is, right? It just basically gives you a burst, okay, when you deal enough dot damage. Okay, and of course, there will be some affixes relating to Ill Omen, right? How they accumulate it, I guess some movement speed if you trigger it recently, right? Whether it spreads to nearby enemies, things like that. Okay, so uh, based off the video as well, they mentioned that Ill Omen stacks are specifically applied via reaping, which is why I say the patch notes probably has some translation errors. So we have to probably wait in game to see how this works. But okay, since they did mention this in the video, I assume that yes, you do probably need to reap in order to apply Ill Omen. But if you were doing a dot build, you would already have reap. So I don't think this is going to be very much of an issue. Okay, and also Ill Omen has to be applied via curse, so it's now called Ominous. So yes, you need to apply Ominous first on them before they can accumulate Ill Omen stacks. Cool. Now, a humongous change. So this is going to be very, 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 very big, in my opinion. So potion skills and other sum skills, okay, are changed to elixir skills. Okay, so elixir skills are basically flasks from PoE. If you have used recovery potion, right, at the start of the game, or sorry, compound potion, right, at the start of the game, right, you will know that you need to kill enemies to get charges, right, before you can use them. So a bunch of skills have been converted to these types of potions. So you no longer have permanent buffs anymore, right? So you need to kill enemies in order to get charges. Now, if you are a purely mapping build, right, you're constantly killing enemies, sure, this shouldn't really be an issue because I think the buffs probably are stronger than before, right? But in terms of bossing, for example, you will no longer be able to have permanent buffs up, right, from certain skills, which we'll talk about later. And to me, the biggest hit here is that Blurry Steps has been converted to an elixir skill, okay, which means no more permanent movement speed, okay, for all the builds that want to run fast, okay, no more permanent Blurry Steps. This is so sad, okay. So they have been changed into three categories. So tonics, dews, and distillates. I think the wording honestly doesn't really matter because they all functionally work the same way, right? Yep, you still have to kill enemies to get charges. So here we have tonic, right? Restores life, but look at it, the restoration is pretty nuts. It's quite a lot more. So I would say that the effects of skills are now stronger than before, but they're no longer permanent. Yeah, so it's a trade-off, right? If you are able to sustain them, overall it is a buff, but if you can't sustain them, then it's enough. So here we have, right, life tonic, swiftness dew, tortoiseshell distillate. So distillates will have special mechanics, dews will have single stat buffs, and tonics is recovery, right? right? So the dews, for example, Swiftness Dew, right? Blurry Steps is now called Swiftness Dew, gives you movement speed, right? There's other stuff that gives you evasion, gives you armor, right? Is really fast from PoE. Okay, but Tortoise Shell Distillate, for example, right, gives you this effect, right? Gives you a shield equal to 11% of max life, but half of damage taken bypasses energy shield. So that's right, it's a special effect that you don't really see anywhere else. Okay, now there's also going to be some skills that are only going to be or drop only or through fluorescent memories. So very cool, another avenue of farming, another potential farm strat. Okay, so Tenacity Dew here gives you max Ellie res, right? Not a super easy source to get. So if you have this, right, I mean, yep, you just get free max elemental rest. Pretty nice. And also this Scorpion Stinger Distillate, right, gives you projectile quantity, skill area, movement speed, right? Basically, it's a God of War buff in a potion. So kind of sick. So we'll have to see what tools we have, whether we can have permanent flask. So now when we go and talk about the new hero, okay, I guess the potions will matter a lot more when you think about having all of these effects on permanently, okay? Okay, we also talk about some general skill changes. So these are not going to be every single skill that has been changed, right? I have basically read through, and these are the ones that I feel are significant. Um, but if you really want to look through the whole thing, you have to look at the patch notes, because if we discuss everything, this video is going to be 1 hour long. Okay, so number one, buff to Spirit Mager's growth, right? You get 25% additional bonus damage, which is pretty humongous. Okay, 25% is quite a lot if you can hit that tier 5. Next one, Mass Effect. So how Mass Effect works previously was that, for example, you had 3 charges, you press a skill, you get bonus effect, right? But if you press it but after a while, if you don't have enough recharge speed, you press it when it only has 1 charge, right? You don't get basically the extra bonuses, right? But now they change it so that as long as you have additional charges, right, like plus charges, it'll give you Empower Skill effect. So that's really nice. It is a buff to Mass Effect. Next one, Precise Weapon Amp no longer has inflict paralysis on hit, but it gives you additional physical damage. Now, I think this is a buff because usually if you are using Weapon Amp, you already have a source of paralysis. You can have it through Grudge, you can have it through your weapon itself, you can have it through Red Umbrella, you can have it through the tree, right? There's a lot of sources of paralysis, okay? So honestly, Weapon Amp having it is not really required, right? So if your build already has a source of paralysis, this is a straight up buff because you have more physical damage. But I guess if this was your only source of paralysis, then it's a nerf. Okay, now Force Start also got additional energy shield charge speed, so that's nice. And okay, I think that's about the end of all the buffs. Okay, the rest of it is basically nerfs. So Haunting Abomination, right? The base damage got halved. That's a humongous drop in base damage. So all the best to the Haunting Abomination players. Now Blazing Bullet special support has been nerfed in terms of projectile size added per projectile quantity. So I think the projectile size will still be pretty big, but it's gonna be smaller. But I think it's still gonna be very playable. And now Ring of Blades finally, okay, not finally, sorry for all the Ring of Blades players. Okay, but it's been brought in line with basically every other kind of channeling skill, right? Now you can enjoy 30% reduced movement speed as well. Bye bye. Okay, and also Frigid Transmission. Okay, previously Frigid Transmission, okay, which is your ice blinking skill, right? It reset the cooldown every single time you freeze an enemy. So they basically removed this. Okay, but you now have reduced cooldown and increased distance. So no longer 1 cm teleports from Frigid Transmission. Okay, but now when you hit a target, you inflict frostbite. So I think this basically just kills Frigid Transmission. Right, the whole point of Frigid Transmission was that you could blink infinitely if you can keep freezing enemies. So now that they remove this, I don't see the point of you using Frigid Transmission over Blink, right? Why would you need to inflict Frostbite using Frigid Transmission, right? Usually if you are using Frigid Transmission, you will already be playing a cold build, right? And you can already inflict Frostbite, right? You're not going to rely on your mobility skill to inflict Frostbite. So yeah, I think Frigid Transmission is basically gone. Everyone is going to stop to Blink now. Cool. Okay, Split Fireball has a change. Now, I don't ever play Split Fireball. This is probably like, it's just a leveling skill. So, the change, so this, I don't know if it's a buff or nerf, okay, but the change is that small fireballs can no longer hit enemies hit by the big fireballs. Now, if you know how Split Fireball works, is that you hit a target and then it splits, right? So I don't know if there's really a lot of overlap between the small and big fireballs hitting and overlapping on the same target, right? Unless when it splits, all the small fireballs hit the big target first, right? But yeah, I'm not a split fireball enjoyer, so I don't really know this, so I can't comment too much. But the base damage, right, of the explosion just got buffed to like some crazy number though. This is like literally more than 10 times, right? It's almost 20 times the base damage. So this could be pretty nuts. We'll have to see. Okay, now Frigid Domain also got a pretty big change, right? Now, instead of the aura being applied on enemies, okay, it's now an aura on you, right? So now it's kind of a generic aura on yourself, just like everything else, right? That gives you additional cold damage. So this is a buff if, for example, you want to hit the threshold for Lone Walker boots, right? A minimum number of auras. Previously, if you had Frigid Domain, right, it didn't count as an aura on yourself, so it doesn't count towards the minimum auras needed to hit the aura effect. But this is also a nerf, okay, for some special supports, right, which reduce the aura effect on you, for example. So yep, it's just a change. I think yep, it's a change, not necessarily a buff or a nerf. We'll have to see the scenario itself. Okay, we talk about some talent tree changes. So well matched. Again, these are not all the changes. It's just some common ones or interesting ones that people generally use. So well matched got a 15% buff in damage to proximity enemies. Master Escapist now has deflection per meters moved, which is way better than evading, right? Because you basically always can gain stacks of deflection now. Full defense got a pretty substantial nerf, so you no longer have additional 25% defense from shield, so armor stackers will lose this one source of armor stacking, right? Okay, we also got some new medium talents that give you elixir skills that gain charging progress per second. Now this is going to help with elixir sustain, right? I don't think it's going to be enough to sustain a potion, but yeah, depending on your skill effect duration, things like that, if you stack enough of these, it could be a potential outlet, for having permanent flask, which is why I put it in here. Okay, and then we also have some changes where you can get focus blessings when activating Tango as well, so that's nice. Some Tango support. Okay, great. Now we can move on to the new hero and the hero changes. So let's talk about Sage, right? So Sage basically revolves around the new elixir skills, right? And you're going to be able to tune your hero elixir. Okay, you basically have a special elixir as part of your trait. Okay, and you're able to change the modifiers on the elixir, okay, depending on what your build wants. Okay, and also Sage will be able to have permanent flasks and have additional bonuses on top of that, right? So it's gonna be good for builds that want a specific type of flask, right? Or even generically, for example, the God of War flask, right? The distillate. Or if you have that permanently, I think this is gonna be quite sick, honestly. Okay, we're gonna go through some of the hero traits. So baseline, we have Licorice Note. Recovery effects are not removed, so you no longer remove your recovery effects. For example, right, if you have your life flask, right, you can have it on permanently. So this is going to be quite insane for regen, I feel. And baseline, you can also enchant elixir skill with additional damage or survival effects. The full list will be in the patch notes, so you probably want to look at that. But yeah, it's basically just additional damage and survival. Okay, now at level 45, you get Pungent Stimulant Salt. So what this does is it gives you an activation medium for either a curse or empower skill. Because your elixir will take up a slot, this is basically letting you socket a curse or a empower skill within that slot itself. So you don't lose out on a skill slot just by having a hero trait. Okay, and the most important one is that it adds a sustain mechanic to the elixir. So you can get charge on crit, charge on reap, charge on distance move, right? Which is special. Right? You don't have all of these on all your other elixirs, from what I see, unless I missed it out in the patch notes, right? So this is going to be a way for you to have permanent flask on this hero specifically. So yep, they're very important. Also, you're going to have increased effect, by the way, for the curse and empower skill, right? It's going to be increased effect. Now at level 60, you have two choices. You can either have Elixir of Immortality or Center of Ambition. So Elixir of Immortality changes excess charge points of life and mana recovery into temporary life or mana, and you gain damage based off that temporary life and mana. So I would say that this character is going to be pretty damn tanky, okay, because your recovery effects from the flasks are going to be pretty insane, right? From what I saw or what we saw just now, right, your tonic was restoring 76% of your life over 2 seconds, right? I think having like a permanent 30 something percent life a second, like not even counting support skills, right? Permanently on is going to be pretty crazy, right? And anything past that, right? Excess charge points, like when you kill enemies, right? They'll be turned into extra life for you as well. So, yep, I think baseline, this character is going to be pretty damn tanky, especially with the Netherrealm FX changes. Okay, the other one is for every X cast, so like 5 for whatever number cast of elixir skills. This one depends on the level, right? It gives you increased skill effect, but you have lesser elixir duration. So this basically just gives you increased flask effect. Okay, every time you cast a flask. Okay, now 75, you get everlasting nectar. So very simple, bonuses to max life or max mana apply to elixir effect. So from what we see, I mean, there's quite a lot of life stacking mechanics, honestly. So I think life stacking, weirdly enough, okay, on this like mage looking character, right, could be a pretty interesting thing. Right? Could be a thing, but you never know, right? I'm not theory crafting anything yet for Sage, but yeah, there's a lot of like things about bonus life and mana stacking. Okay, and we also have Licorice Tincture Blend, which I think most people will be going for this one. So Elixir skills will gain one of these. Oh, it's supposed to gain one additional effect, not N1. So number one is life recovery affects ES recovery, but you cannot restore ES. So basically, just gives you permanent regen on your ES based off life recovery, from what I understand. And then you also gain extra damage based off max energy shield. Second one, you get innate explode. Very cool. Early on. Afterwards, I think you will be able to get sources of explode. So, yeah, it's just going to be very nice when you're pushing, for example, profound early on and you want to explode. Okay, and then last one is you get increased block chance, but you take true damage equal to percent of mitigated damage over a few seconds. So it's something like Progenesis, but not really, right? So it's mostly a additional defensive layer for block builds, right? If you can't hit that block chance, maximum chance to block, yeah. Okay, so very interesting hero. Could be pretty damn strong. Okay, depending on how expensive the flasks are, etc. Right. Whew. Okay. Next we have some changes for Tia. So because I have not touched Tia for a jabillion years, right, since like the first few seasons when they were released, I don't really have too much to comment about this honestly. Um, yeah, I don't really have too much, but we'll just talk about it still. So tier 1 is still going to revolve around blessing stacking. So overall, this is a buff to like the whole blessing stacking archetype for her. But I don't particularly see this class being popular still, because generally people want to stack a specific type of blessing and not really every single blessing at the same time. But who knows, maybe this change is enough for this archetype to revive itself somehow. Okay, so I mean, what God's Boon is that it consumes all your focus blessings to give yourself God's Boon, and you gain damage based off focus blessings consumed. Oh wait, sorry, I remembered wrongly. Right, this one is your tenacity and agility blessing applies to focus blessing. Right. Okay, so I guess if you still want to stack focus blessings, this is probably going to be a decent ascendancy for it, or hero for it. Right, but I guess you can read it. Again, I don't particularly have too much to comment on this. I think someone more knowledgeable probably will release a video on this, but yep, it's not gonna be me, unfortunately, because I have no idea what I'm saying. Okay, now we go tier 2. So tier 2, okay, still revolves around being inside or outside the divine realm. So if you know how tier 2 does, right, it generates a circle on the floor. So depending whether you're inside or outside, you gain certain benefits. So I still think it's a hassle to deal with the circle mechanic, so I don't really touch tier 2. Uh, but yeah, I think generally if you're inside the realm, you take less damage, and then when you're outside the realm, you get like movement speed, attack speed, stuff like that, right? So yes, if you're okay with dealing with this circle mechanic, I think tier 2 should be pretty okay, right? It's technically still a buff, so yeah. Okay, I don't really want to talk about this. Okay, now we talk about some mild stuff. We have Selena buffs. So we have some increased tide effect, we have some increased tide area, and some more tide effect. I wouldn't say it's humongous buffs, right? But it is still a buff if you wanted to play Selena. So very cool. Now Rosa 2 got a very slight nerf in terms of a hero trait, right? You went from restoring 16% of unsealed max mana to 15% when using non-channel attack skills. Now, I will honestly, this you might as well not talk about this at all, right? Because if you talk about, yeah, this is it's a 1% change. I don't think it's gonna change much at all, honestly. So, yeah. But I have to say that Rosa 2 did get indirectly nerfed due to quite a few items, okay, losing their damage taken from mana before life. So just take note of that. Okay, Erica 3 got some nerfs, and honestly, I don't know if this is even required, because Erica 3 was already a stat check champ, like honestly, before this, and I don't think it was a uber popular class, right? Based off how kind of clunky she feels. So, alright, I mean, I guess it warranted a nerf still. So, Incisive no longer provides 10% attack damage, so no more free damage from your base trait. Vendetta got some nerfs to the attack damage, and your Unbearable Felines also got a nerf to the crit, and also got nerf to how it works. So previously, excess crit chance will give you chance to trigger your melee skill up to 100%. Now it just gives you additional damage. So I think overall this is, in terms of damage wise, is pretty much the same, right? Unless the math is wrong. But your clear will be technically worse, right? Because you trigger less skills, but you do more damage. And if you are doing damage cap I mean, if you're doing damage cap, right? The new trait will let you hit the cap per attack faster, but the previous one lets you hit. Okay, wait. Sorry, this video has gone on for quite some time. Okay, I think it should be the same, right? Technically, if you're hitting damage cap, but your clear will just be worse because you're triggering less skills. Okay, Karina 2. So Karina 2 got a massive revamp. Okay, my apologies. I should have a image here. Okay, I think I'll add this in post-production. But yeah, so most of the hero traits will revolve now around projectile damage and also deflection and fortitude as a defensive layer. So it's going to be very, very generic. If you want to play a projectile build, you can just play Karina 2. I think it's quite straightforward. Right, and there's also some variation where you can change it so that your projectiles jump off Terra skills or jump to. Oh, shit, I think it's jump off Terra skills. Yeah, but generically, as long as you're doing projectile damage, right, you probably want to play Karina 2 now. Okay, Karina 3 also got a slight nerf. Right, heat up bonus gain during burning phase is reduced from 200% to 160. I think it's still very okay. Now, Moto 1 got a buff. So they have changed and kind of like streamlined their stuff a little bit. So we have overall buffs to synthetic troops, right? And will be the go-to class if you want to play the new model skills. So Moto 1 players rejoice. Okay, your time has finally come. Okay, you finally have some good changes. Okay, enjoy your league. Now, Iris 1, they removed one of the traits for level 45, and they also basically changed one of this level 60 trait. So there's going to be now focus on using ultimate skills rather than enhanced skills. So that could be pretty interesting, right? Because no one really focused on ultimate skills on your Maguses. So yeah, could be a interesting new build archetype, I guess. Okay. Rahan 2 also got nerfs. So instead of getting max life, you now have minus 15% max life, so that's life stacking nerfs. And also you get less damage from Rage Infusion, right? From 30% to 20%. So I don't know if Brahan 2 particularly needed any nerfs, but yep. Okay, Tier 3 also got nerfs. So you no longer get that free chunk of damage at the very beginning, right? So now you only can deal up to 15% max life as true damage, no longer 25 technically. So bye bye. That's, I guess, yeah, no more free damage. Okay, and also enjoy your minus additional 10% minus erosion resistance. Okay. So here we have some unique changes. So I'm only going to mention the notable ones. I'm not going to talk about every single one because it's going to be way too long. And this video has, wow, it's already 45 minutes. Jesus. Okay, Warden's Breastpin. So for minion players, okay, previously you will want to get rid of the minions can only deal physical damage line. Now you can just roll it and just not have that line. Um, so now they change it to you can only deal, for example, erosion, elemental, and physical. So I think most people will still be doing elemental damage, right? So it's a change, right? I would say that it's gonna be more accessible and it's technically better because you have +1 to 2 minion skill level instead of passive skill level now. So very cool. Warden Breastpin buffed. Compensatory knife nerfed, right? So now instead of having when you're in low life, you have spell augmentation. You now have when not at full mana, you have level 25 to 30 spell amplification. Yeah, this is a patch notes translation error, right? That's why it look weird. Is this spell amp, not spell augmentation? But yep. So nerf to Rosa 2, no longer free aura. So another nerf to Rosa 2. Trinity. Now Trinity says you can only deal elemental damage. So if you are somehow converting elemental damage to erosion damage, you can no longer do that. But I don't think a lot of people were doing that in the first place because in the first place, Trinity gives you elemental pen based off your minimum elemental resistance, right? You're already getting elemental pen, not like erosion pen. So I think this is pretty inconsequential overall, but yeah, just take note of that. Valerie Nitro, in terms of talent tree, there's also some talent tree and affix changes. There are some new blur nodes, so blur stacking is probably a thing, and Valerie Nitro will probably be one of the options, right, for blur stacking. Okay, Ralph's Journey. So there's gonna be a nerf to the maximum amount of movement speed they can get. Now, between you and me, I don't think either of us are gonna get more than 6,000 decks. So I don't think this is very big of an issue. Okay, most players are not gonna get 6,000 decks. Yeah. Okay, Ice Drinker's Cage has been nerfed, so you can get 4 layers of cage normally, so you get like 8% less damage. It's whatever, honestly, it's negligible. Now, Forlorn Crystal did get, I would say this is a pretty substantial nerf, so you got 25% nerf, okay, from like the additional damage from armor. So, yep, about 25% damage nerf from Forlorn Crystal itself. Broken Sun Ring, they changed it so that you get less damage from like Steep Strike, Phantom Damage, and Demolisher Charge, but they buff the baseline damage that they take when they're within the circle. So if they are within your Solar Ring circle, right, they still take the same amount of damage because they increased it by 10 and lowered 10% to the flat generic additional damage. So, yep, it's a nerf if you're hitting things outside a circle. It's exactly the same if they are within the circle. Iron Nest, you can. I don't think anyone wants to read the previous one. Okay, but all you have to see is that the new Iron Nest seems pretty good for minions, right? So again, this is probably a minion league, right? Gives you additional damage from minions and gives you command return speed, immunity to trauma. Seems like a pretty damn good amulet to use. Yep. Feline Steps. Okay, overall you get way more reaping recovery now from Feline Steps, and it's also easier to get the reaping recovery speed stacks because you get it from all blessings, right? As long as you have a source of generating the blessing, you'll get your reaping recovery speed. So this is overall, I think, pretty good for your reap builds. Opening Heart, you now get, I guess it's technically a buff, right? Nearby enemies will take additional damage, right? So you get 8 to 18% additional damage, right, if they're near you. Ooh, Troublemaker. For Megas players, this is just straight buff throughout everything, so don't need to care too much, right? You just permanently have this mini tough guy buff, right? And you have some increased damage for growth. So, yep, just straight buffs. Okay, the Tango Helmet has a nerf to raw damage now, but a buff to crit chance, so that's nice. But nearby, so you no longer have unlucky crit chance, which is really nice. There's a big buff to the amount of crit chance that you need. But nearby enemies are guaranteed to land critical strikes, so enjoy being one-shotted. Thank you. Next. Phantom got a nerf to the aura levels, but gives you increased max mana as a result. I think this is basically a nerf because 3% max mana is not going to offset 5 levels, upwards of 10 levels, right, from aura effect. So actually it's 10 levels of aura effect, yeah. Bad. Archmage Hands got reduced. The damage taken from mana before life has been reduced. Okay, the only thing I have to talk about this is they added a new blending talent that gives you 20% damage taken from mana before life. So I think overall your mana stackers should still be relatively okay. Right? I don't think it's dead on arrival, but yeah, I feel like there are quite a few nerfs to Rosa too. So may not be as popular as before, not as easy to play. Okay. Crimson King for life stackers. Okay, you have now wait a minute. Uh hold on, this is opposite. It should be the other way around. This is a buff, right? You have more chance to do double damage, not less chance. So take note of that. I'll change it in my final document. Now, hero memory changes. This one is going to be quite big as well. So we have new fixed affixes for immunity to ignite, trauma, and wilt. So that's cool for deep space farming. We also have new fixed affixes for cooldown recovery speed. Okay, the biggest change we have is something called hero memory revival. Okay, what this is now, okay, hero memories will be, you'll be able to elevate how strong your hero memories are. Okay, so first of all, we have to use materials called basic revival materials to add revival effects to a memory. Okay, so we have a material that will give us, for example, wax and wane. Well, actually, I don't really know how this works exactly, honestly, right? So based off the target material, I think it changes like um the percentages of all of these, I'm assuming, right? And all effects are not mutually exclusive, so you can technically have all effects on the hero memory, right? So let's go through some of the effects first, right? And what this means is that just because I have wax and wane on the hero memory, like this thing procs, it doesn't mean that all the others cannot trigger. Right? You can technically have everything on at the same time. Okay, so first one, wax and wane. Right, this one will increase the base stat FX values. So example here, if you're giving me 110 dex, now it gives me 143 dex. Very simple. Rising Moon basically increase your fixed FX tiers, right, from whatever tier to a higher tier. Right, so you can go from T1 to T0. So that's pretty good. Next one we have Lunar Ring. Now this is the most interesting part. So Lunar Ring will add a special random affix. So this could be Warcry effect, Elixir effect, fist damage taken as elemental damage, right? Like these mods that don't usually appear on hero memories. Okay, so those are, I guess, your three baseline common ones that you'll use most of the time. Now, the last one, the Young Moon. Yeah, this Young Moon thing. Okay, it will add a special base mod onto your hero. Onto your hero memories. And ultimate mods will have a special mod pool that alters hero traits, for example. Okay, so as you can see here, this crescent or this moon looking icon, right, is this Young Moon effect. So here we have like additional damage if you dealt a crit, but crit strikes do not deal additional damage, right? So I guess some of these have some downsides, some of it are pure upsides, right? You will have to wait to see what the full list is gonna be. Okay, so very interesting. Now we talk about the ultimate ones. So here, okay, for example, the one on the left, right? You change your Rahan 1 trait. Okay, explosion is changed to explosion. Okay, probably translation, but whatever, right? And allows activation of spell burst. So very cool. Now Rahan 1 goes from a attack-based character to a spell-based character. Right. So this is what I mean by they changed the hero trait. So it's very, very interesting. Very, very cool. Um, and for example here, the Moto 1 Neuro Synchronization Training. So after casting a summoning skill, the player will also gain Overload, lasting 4 seconds. Okay, basically it changes how your hero trait works, so it opens up a lot of build possibilities, so it's quite crazy. They also have very generic ones. So example, this artificial moon discipline, right, allows your base trait slot to have a hero memory slot. Now that is kind of nuts, right? You have 4 hero memories now, so that's going to be insane. And if they hit the maximum level, right, they hit level 5, they also get additional effects, right? You see this 100% additional cooldown recovery. So in terms of min-maxing, this is going to be very, very nuts, right? Look at this. +2 hero trait level. Imagine you get +2 hero trait, immune to trauma. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Max frostbite rating, max elemental resistance, and you still have 2 more lines below. Holy shit. Okay, hero memories endgame wise is gonna be very, very crazy. So, yep. Now, I have no idea where this hero memory revival stuff drops from. I have no clue at all. Right? They did not mention where this drops. I am assuming that it drops from the league mechanic, right? Because the league mechanic is supposed to give you some source of power. So I'm assuming that the Lunaria league mechanic, right, moon based things, okay, will drop these hero memory revival items. Okay, almost 1 hour long, so I'm gonna quickly talk about this. So miscellaneous changes. You have UI. Oh, sorry. Yeah. UI changes, right? Honestly, I kind of prefer the old one, right? Like, but it is still kind of clean. But I feel like the old one had some charm to it, you know? Like it had the torchlight charm. Now it kind of looks more like generic mobile game kind of vibe. So yeah, there's just a change. Next one we have model updates. So Tia and Erica got model updates. I think yep, looks clearer, looks sharper, looks more up to date. Um, Also, some skills got a visual update, so Cyclone looks kind of sick. I think I'm going to start Cyclone. It looks really nice. Okay, other things, we have trade house improvements. So just in general, you are able to have better searches now on the trade house. Yep, like finding double base affixes. You have more selectivity for divinity slates. Okay, and also I think this is the more significant one. Now, inventory and trade house stack limit increased from 999 to 9999. Okay, for some items. So I don't know if they haven't implemented it in the video, but I feel like Netherrealm Resonance should be one of the first few things that should have the limit increased to 9999. But in the video, they still showed stacks of 999. So no idea. We'll have to go in game and see. And also, we are going to have this option to quick buy items without needing to confirm, which means you don't have no longer have to click confirm when buying it. But this also means that if you get landmine, there's no protection against that. So use it at your own will, I guess. Okay, final thoughts, right? There's gonna be an insane number of builds to try across the board, right? We have new skills, we have hero traits being revamped, we have the new hero, we have current traits being reworked, right? Basically, there's a lot of things to do in this season. I think, yeah, there's quite a lot of things. Now, current farming strategies are going to be largely unchanged, except for God's shares being, I guess, wildly being changed. But yeah, things like cube, arcana, clockwork, right? Basically, everything is unchanged. I wish that they did implement some new compasses for existing mechanics still, right? Like for example, they added a cube compass last league that changed how you farm cube, so that would have been pretty nice this league. But I mean, yeah, we will still have some new farming strats from, for example, creation engine, right? Vorex will have some compasses as well. So I think overall there's still going to be very, very interesting farming strats to do. Yeah, still gonna be a banger of a league as always. So I think that's the end of the video. Now, I mean, this is not gonna be the full changes for every single thing, cause yeah, it would be even longer than this video. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Maybe you leave this to the side while doing something else just to hear me talk, I guess. But yeah, about 1 hour long. Now, I think that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching over at Puddle, and I'll see you at League Start. Bye bye.